Welcome to another episode of Chax Chat. Join Chad Chelius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Chax Chat Podcast. My name is Chad Chelius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor and one of the accessibility wizards here at Chax Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I am the other accessibility wizard here at Chax Training and Consulting. And Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists. And if you'd like your certification too, head on over to accessibilityassociation.org and click on certifications. You can get CPAC or WAS or ADS. There's lots of certifications in the accessibility world. So head on over and do that. Awesome. Chad, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Awesome.
I'm excited about our guest today.
I want to just jump right in, right? So am I. So before I say who it is, Chad and I are old friends, and we are friends going back a few years, and we both worked at a place and where we met this guest. And they are amazing. And we have kept that relationship throughout those years. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Matisse Hamel-Nelis as our guest today. Welcome, Matisse. It is so great to see you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am equally as excited. I have been a fangirl of both of yours for years before we became friends. So for me, this is endgame. Big goals.
Well, I have been following you on LinkedIn over the last couple of years, and I've been watching you just kill it, just really blossom into what is an amazing career. And I wanted to have you on the podcast, one, because you have a new book out, Accessible Communications, Create Impact, Avoid Missteps and Build Trust. And that's will have been released October 28th, right?
Yep. In North America, October 28th, and in UK and the rest of the world, October 3rd.
Oh, awesome. Well, I guess you guys got it. We're behind the times, as it were, but this podcast will air after that. So go head on over to Amazon and look that up. You can definitely get your copy. But I want to talk about the book a bit, but then I also want to talk about you and your journey, because a lot of our listeners have approached us over the years and said, hey, I do accessibility. I know about accessibility. I'm either remediating or I'm the advocate for my organization. How do I do more? How do I get more involved? How do I become more than this person advocating at the bottom end of the spectrum? And I want to talk a little bit about that journey. So let's flip it back over and let's talk about your book first. So tell me, how the heck did you find time in between all the other things you were doing to write a book?
I still don't know how my co-author Lisa Reimers and I were able to do this, but we did. It started about 18 months ago. I had this idea knowing that there is this gap in understanding accessibility in communications and public relations and marketing. It's just sort of yeah, we know we have to do it. It's the web team's job. Not the case. We all know it's not the case. It's everybody's responsibility. So I approached her, and I am so glad, happy, honored that she said, you know what? Yeah, let's tackle this together. And I said, okay, perfect. Great. Now we have to create a mock table of contents and manuscript, if you will, to send to publishers to see if they would be interested. And Kogan Page was our be all end all. We wanted to go with Kogan Page. And luckily, when we sent over our proposal, they loved it. And they said, yeah, please go with it. And last 18 months has basically been us writing chapter after chapter, over 80,000 words.
Wow.
Her living in the UK, me living in Toronto, Canada, making timelines and, different time zones work for us was an adventure and a half. I would do it all over again, though, because the end product I'm very, very proud of. And I'm so happy that we're able to provide guidance to anybody really who communicates, whether it's writing an email, whether it's doing a presentation or talking to people. We tried to cover it in the book as much as we could within those 80,000 some odd words to make sure that everyone could be accessible in how they communicate.
So can you tell us a bit, like, why would if I'm listening to this podcast, tell me why your book would make an impact on me? What would I want your book to, what would I get out of reading your book?
Yeah, so our book provides not only a bit of understanding around the legislation and the basics of accessibility and accessibility models, but also looking at how can I make what I do day to day, emails, social media posts, understanding the basics of documents and what that means to be accessible and the impact it has on people with disabilities when we are being accessible. Because at the end of the day, we want our message that we are trying to get out there to be understood by everybody. And so with our book, I think that we've kind of put together how do we do that in a way that does actually reach everybody in the best possible way, so that it's easy to understand, it's easy to implement right away, and it's a matter of, just getting down to it and not just saying, it's somebody else's responsibility, but realizing it's also our responsibility at the end of the day, because we're all creating content, whether it be on social media or videos or whatever the case is.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm still like smiling ear to ear. Sorry.
It's okay. Chad, did you have anything you wanted to ask Matisse?
No, I mean, I'm really intrigued, by the concept of it because, listen, I mean, what Dax and I do, what you do, a lot of what we do is explaining what is accessibility, right? Like what exactly is it and why should I care about it? And it sounds like your book is addressing a lot of these questions, right?
Yeah, it does. And it really, while it's targeted to more communications, marketing, and public relations professionals, it's really for anybody who communicates. Because like I said, we all create content daily. So much content gets created by us on social media, emails, documents, you name it, we create it. And it's not just because I'm a PR professional or I'm a remediator or anything like that. I just create content. We just do it naturally and innately. So the book is just really there to say, okay, we know you create content. Let me explain to you why it's important to make it accessible. And here are some tips that you can start implementing right away to do that. Versus, it's going to take you 6 years to learn. So hold on tight and then make it seem overbearing or daunting
Right.
or, you know what I mean? But here are some quick tips and tricks that you can start implementing right away to be more accessible and inclusive in what you're doing.
Well, Matisse, like what else would you like to showcase about your book? Like, what are some key points that we can talk about?
Yeah, so with the book, we are launching a microsite at the end of the month as well to go along with the book launch, where it has checklists and videos and all that stuff to help people see in practice what we're talking about versus just simply having written in words. But we can talk about, like Dax was saying, sort of my journey in the accessible space, because it didn't start with accessibility. It was creating a tweet that sort of led me down that path of, oh goodness, what do I not know? Right. So, and learning and knowing that it's a constant learning thing. Just because I wrote a book doesn't mean that I'm the be all end all. I'm all constantly learning day in and day out. And that's the same for anybody who's in this space. There's always changes and, updates and everything, like WCAG now going into 3.0 at some point in time. And everyone's just getting on board with 2.2 and all that stuff.
But you actually talk some of the summaries of the book say you teach people how to avoid some of the missteps. What do you think some of the most common missteps are that people tend to take that they have?
Yeah. So I think one of the common things there is around, first of all, social media is a big one. Hashtags, not using camel case or Pascal case in hashtags. And there's this notion that camel case and Pascal case are the same, when in reality they are similar, but they are very different.
Well, what's Pascal case? Yeah, I was going to
Exactly.
say, tell me what Pascal, because that's the first time I've ever heard of Pascal case.
Yeah. So Pascal case means that in a multi-word hashtag, the first letter of each word is capitalized. So for example, in the hashtag something like this, it's a capital S in something, a capital L in like, and a capital T in this. In camel case, however, it's the first word is all lowercase, and then each word afterwards, the first letter is capitalized. So using the same example as something like this, something would be all lowercase, capital L in like, and capital T in this.
So everybody's using this incorrectly. I got flack from this, actually. Just pull the onion back, the curtain back a little bit. I never capitalize the first word on my hashtag. It just doesn't feel right for me. I had no idea the difference between camel case and Pascal case. I thought when you capitalize every letter, every first letter, that's camel case. So someone flamed me. They sent me this nasty email, LinkedIn message saying, for someone who's an accessibility professional, you should be using camel case. Camel case is not, and you don't capitalize the first letter in your blah, blah, blah. And I wrote them back and I said, well, thank you. I appreciate you being an advocate for accessibility. But if you listen to a hashtag with assistive technology, you would know there's no barrier there.
No.
It reads the first word just fine. It'll read number sign or number, depending upon what screen reader you use. But I just prefer not to capitalize the first letter because it just feels different. So now I have the actual justification for what that is. And I think everybody assumes that what you're saying is Pascal case is called camel case. I know what's in my slide deck says camel case.
Yeah, it's used interchangeably, and people don't realize that, yes, they're similar, but they're still nuanced and they're different at the end of the day. So yeah, it's something that a lot of people do, or they just forget to do it, period. And then you have the instance that I love to use in my PR class is around Susan Boyle and her hashtag for Susan's album party, which then read out as Sue's anal bum party, which could have all been avoided with camel case or Pascal case, whichever one they preferred, but one of them would have helped in that situation because it's still now ranked one of the worst social media blunders in PR history. So,
wow.
Yeah.
to kind of explain all of this, right? So like if we were to, there's a direct correlation with what we run into in document accessibility actually. But, what you're kind of saying, like, let's say we never did camel or Pascal case. We just did all lowercase. Assistive technology is going to try to voice that as one giant big word, right?
Yes.
It's going to, now, depending on where I don't know what it is, consonant or vowel, but depending on where some of them fall, it may do okay and it may not. But what you're kind of saying is that by capitalizing, it's kind of the equivalent of having a space between the word, and it tends to voice it more appropriately.
Exactly. And not only that, from a visual perspective, when you have a longer hashtag, you're able to actually differentiate what the hashtag is supposed to be versus spending that extra time trying to break up the hashtag into words that it looks like and then realizing maybe it's inappropriate and that's probably not what they were wanting, or trying to figure out where the actual breaks are. So it doesn't just help with assistive technology and letting it know these are now words, sort of like the spacing like you mentioned, but rather it helps everybody better understand what you're trying to get across from a hashtag perspective.
Yeah. I mean, we deal with that in document accessibility a lot because people love to use a soft return to kind of force a line to break at a certain location.
Yeah.
But they'll often neglect to put a space in front of that soft return. So effectively what it does is it mashes two words together as one.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, depending on where the consonant or the vowel falls, sometimes you're okay. But other times when it mashes those words together, it tries to voice it as a totally new word, and it sounds very, very odd and obscure,
Yeah.
So that's really, really cool information, Matisse. And so like between camel case, Pascal case, like your preference is which?
My preference is Pascal case. It just makes it easier for me to read what the hashtag is supposed to be, but I also completely understand. And I think that's why camel case and Pascal case are sort of the two that people go to. And there isn't a better or worse, or they're just, as long as you do one of them, you're good, because the assistive tech does follow through and read the hashtag the way it's supposed to. But also from a visual perspective, like Dax prefers camel case and reading hashtag versus myself, Pascal case. Both are okay as long as we're using one.
And I'm terrible because I am the worst dyslexic, speller. I also, editors hate me because I'll randomly capitalize words as I'm typing just for no reason. Like, not really random words, but like things that are not proper nouns, but I make them proper nouns. I'm just not consistent at all with my titles, like always using sentence case or always using title case. I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going to use title case, and I'll capitalize the first word, but then the next two will be lowercase, and then I'll go back to capitalizing the last three words. It's terrible. I'm terrible at that. So good to know. Question for you. So looking ahead, what are some of the emerging challenges or opportunities you see in accessible communications, considering things like media format, AI, and all the other things that we're kind of seeing on the horizon?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the big trends and where we're seeing a lot of folks gravitate towards in communications is definitely the AI side of things.
Right.
And it's pros and cons. Right. So from a pro perspective, it's able to assist people to write things in plain language, which maybe they struggle with, and write an active voice and shortening their sentences if need be, if they're 35 words long, and saying, all right, let's tidy this up a little bit. But the cons is that, if you ask any social media, AI platform to write a social media post, you're going to get it loaded with emojis. And emojis can become a hindrance. Not to say that they're not accessible. Yes, they each have their own alternative text, but that's dependent on the browser, platform, and device that it's being viewed on. So it might vary from browser device and platform to browser device and platform. And when you have it so loaded with emojis, it's just overwhelming to listen to, right?
Yeah.
Given that it has its own alt text. And we're seeing a lot of trends, or it's trending right now, where because the social media platforms themselves don't offer formatting options like adding bullets, for example, people are using emojis to add bullets, which, yes, visually it looks fun and dandy and like, oh, that's cute. But does the alt text actually describe what you wanted to describe? Is it being blended into the rest of the content? So now it's just garble, like you don't understand what the heck's going on. And that sort of thing. So yes, you can ask AI to then, remove emojis. But then people say, but I miss the emojis. I like that they have the emojis. So understanding how to use them accessibly, like at the end of the post, not replacing words, don't have it in between words. That big trend of when you're trying to get a point across where there's the clapping hands emoji in between each word. Yeah. That is just, clapping hands, how clapping hands does clapping hands, clapping hand sound. And just... when I do training, I'll tell people, if you want to have that impact of that visual, make it an image and add alternative text to it, where it says, how does this sound, text reading, how does this sound with clapping hands emoji in between each word? Oh, sounds so much better to hear than clapping hands 20 times, right?
And all us document guys can say is, can I artifact them?
Yeah. But then it doesn't get the point across, right?
Yeah.
Because that was the whole point.
As a person who uses AI on a daily basis, I will say that I do. I have trained my AI to only use the green checkmark emoji. So I've given it, so you can give your AI hard and fast rules that it remembers forever. And so I've told it, keep track, never ever use any emoji that isn't the green checkmark. And I only use it for bullets and only when I'm doing a bulleted list, because I know that across all assistive technologies that I've tested it on, it says green checkmark or checkmark. Yeah. And so I'm okay with that. But when I teach the social media class for our clients, I use Party Popper as the one that people use all the time, which is that little megaphone with a little confetti that comes out of it. And then the one that is interesting that people don't understand is police alert siren. And it is that little police car siren. Yeah. And so one of the sentences was someone's name, police, car alert. And, it was like made the sentence sound completely different. So absolutely awesome. So, so let's talk a bit about your journey. I want to give room here because can you talk about kind of where you were 5 years ago from a professional standpoint compared to where you are now, and maybe some of the forks in the road that really led you kind of to make the decisions that have brought you to be where you are?
Yeah. So 5 years ago, I was working for a national nonprofit that focused on sight loss. And I was the project manager for the Inclusive Workplaces Grant, which was a fantastic opportunity, but it was also during the pandemic. And at that time, I just sort of felt like I was a bit restricted and wanted to spread my wings. So I joined a different organization at the time. And from there, circumstances changed and I decided to go out on my own about 2 years ago. Uh, just under 2 years ago. Well, now 2 years ago, based on when this is going to air. So 2 years ago. And with that, I sort of thought, okay, there's a gap or there's a space here where accessibility and digital accessibility in particular are missing within the communications and public relations space. Whether it be via training or just consulting and helping businesses and organizations and agencies better embed accessibility in their practices and how they help their clients achieve accessibility and best practice and legislative requirements and that sort of thing. Just sort of kickstarted what I wanted to do. So I started off a bit small, more local, but then it just word of mouth, it started to grow. And I have some really incredible clients from municipalities to larger agencies and that sort of thing, where I provide training or just consulting perspectives on what they're working on campaigns to ensure that they're being accessible and inclusive. And so I never expected to be my own boss. I'm not going to lie. But when the opportunity came up, it just sort of felt like kismet that it was the right time and the right push to do it. And I always have that teaching opportunity at my local college where I teach right now in the advertising program, where I teach students about accessibility and communications and public relations and things that they need to consider. So I still get to be out and about and provide knowledge and insights to students. So the future of communications, marketing, and advertising, but also get to do my own thing and help businesses and organizations embed it. I always say, like, ideally, I wouldn't need to have my business and just focus on PR and communications, because the digital accessibility stuff would be naturally woven into what everybody does already. I shouldn't be needed for that aspect. I should be needed for the other stuff. But until then, I'm here to support.
Now, Matisse, you said you're launching a microsite that's going to be included with your book, correct?
Yeah, so Lisa and I are currently just finalizing our microsite that will coincide with the book, accessiblecomms.com, I believe it is. Oh, don't hold me. I can't remember the URL off the top of my head. That's awkward.
That's okay.
That's awkward. But yes, we're launching a microsite, which is it's basically to go hand in hand with the book itself. So we are creating videos and checklists and just extra information, resource library, where they can find out more information that goes beyond just the book, because the book is, 360 some odd pages. You can't talk about all of accessibility in that time. So, and we're not the only ones in the space. So we are trying to promote and highlight other resources that people have available to them to really dive in to learn specific areas, whether it be document accessibility with the two of you and your podcast and your organization, or if it's, podcasting in general, how do I make that accessible? Or who are some disability influencers that are really important to follow to have a better understanding of that lived experience, and so on and so forth. So building it out that way so that you have the book, but you also have the microsite that will continue to grow and expand as things change, as new resources become available, and provide that opportunity for folks to continue learning, because that's really, at the end of the day, what this is all about, is always learning.
Awesome. Well, that's a super idea. Now, you have a podcast.
I do.
I happen to have been on that podcast.
Yes, you both were. Yes.
Yeah. PR and Lattes, right? That is your podcast. Let's tell all the listeners about your podcast that may have not heard of it.
For sure. So PR and Lattes is actually both a podcast and a blogging community, if you will, for communications, PR professionals, marketers, advertisers, to just share their insights and perspectives on what's happening in their respective fields. The podcast itself, last year was a great year that we hosted the Global Accessibility Awareness Day week of content. That's where the two of you joined to talk about accessible documents. We've had others on the podcast as well, like Carl Groves, just sort of talk about accessibility. Ashley Nemeth was on there as well, talking from the lived experience as somebody who is deafblind and as a communicator as well. So it's just meant to be an educational space for folks who are in those fields to learn more, not just about accessibility. That's not the the primary perspective, but because of my passion for accessibility, I'll weave it in wherever I can. But just in general, what does communications, marketing, PR, and advertising look like in today's day and age, especially when we have things like AI and politics and all that fun stuff that's going on? How do we work? How do we continue to grow and pivot, if you will?
If you could give a person listening advice, what is the one thing you would tell them when it comes to, if I'm in the PR world, right? I'm a PR, social media professional, whatever, in that space. How is learning more about accessibility going to benefit me in my career? And at what point do I stop? Because like Chad and I, the needle is far on the side toward expert. We have spent just countless hours, but someone who's just does social media and PR, maybe they're doing RFP, kind of proposal stuff. Mm-hmm. They may not want to be the expert. So what do you tell that person as far as why is accessibility valuable to them and how far should they go?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So why is accessibility important to them? They're trying to get their main message across. That is, at the end of the day, what we do as communicators. We are trying to get our message out there to as many people as possible in a way that they can digest it, right? The medium is the message was the famous phrase that was used, right? So if we're talking about social media in particular, if I'm posting a social media post on Instagram and there's no alt text to it, and maybe a prospective client is blind and they're trying to access and navigate what's happening on your image, and all they're hearing on their screen reader is image, might be an image of, and it's completely off, they're going to continue and skip and scroll and not even worry about it. Or if it's littered with emojis in the middle and they're trying to listen to it, they're going to just say, okay, this is just overwhelming, I'm going to skip. You never know who your end user is going to be or who your target audience may wind up being as soon as you post it on social media. That is public domain at that point. So you don't want to, I'm going to say, unintentionally exclude people because your content isn't accessible. Same thing goes with if you're putting in an RFP, for example. You want to make sure, even at its basic state, if it's a Word document, that's all you know how to do. Great. Let's show you how to create accessible Word documents so that at the end of the day, when you submit your RFP, because you don't necessarily know who on the other side is going to be looking at it or engaging with it, they're able to get all the information they need independently using the information that they have and their assistive technology as needed, versus saying, I don't understand, can somebody read this out to me, and feeling lesser than and not being able to engage. You never know who your final end audience is going to be. And that's something when I worked at the nonprofit was one of my pet peeves would be, well, I'm not sending this to somebody who's blind. And I would say, you don't know that. What if it gets shared? What if it gets shared? One of our executives at the time, and then they had more, but at the time was blind. It's like, what if it gets passed to her because it's a great idea? Oh, I guess it should be accessible. And that was in a sight loss organization, right? Wow. So it's just a matter of understanding that you never know who's going to get your information. You never know who needs to absorb and understand your message. And to ensure that everybody has access to it easily, because at the end of the day, we're trying to get through content so quickly. So no matter what it is, if you're able to access it very quickly, understand what's happening, what is needed, so on and so forth, your message will get to who it needs to get to properly, versus it being lost and you miss out on a potential client, or, you miss out on a potential customer or participant for a service or a program just because you decided it's not worth my time. In terms of when is it enough to learn? It's never enough to learn, unfortunately. Like we're constantly learning, and it doesn't mean you have to be an expert. But if Instagram changes their reels to be that ridiculously narrow thing that's going out right now, and this is September-ish, end of September, beginning of October that we're talking, I need to know, how do I make that accessible? If there's talking, how the heck am I going to fit captions in there?
Right.
Considering is jumping on that bandwagon and saying, yeah, we're going to follow this trend applicable for what I'm trying to do? Or, do you avoid it and actually stick to the regular Reels format? And that's just going to come with the territory and what we do in communications and PR in particular. Things are always changing, so we always have to be on top of how it works, right? When Blue Sky came out, we were advocating for it to have alt text, and they came out and said, yeah, you can add alt text and you have 2,000 characters. Great, wonderful. So now we have to implement and say, okay, when we're creating Blue Sky posts, make sure we have our alt text or image description, versus, ignoring it and saying, oh, well, they added it in after and I don't have to think about it. No.
Well, what's interesting is Blue Sky also requires you to, it's not that you can add it. It requires that you add it. In fact, it requires it if you upload a video. Yeah. It requires alt text for the video, which I thought was interesting because I get transcript or captions, but alt text for the video, that seems a little bit of not sure if they really understand the point of accessibility, but hey, progress over perfection. I am all about supporting you, saying I'd much rather have more information than less.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the other thing, is also having people understand that it is progress over perfection. And the concept of you're never going to be 100% accessible to everybody blows people's minds, because, at the end of the day, it's the end user experience and the end user, their settings, their preferences. You can't do that for over 1 billion people. It's just, it's not realistic, but we can do our best. We can continue progressing and trying new things and fixing when we do get notified that there are issues or barriers. And I tell my clients, when you get feedback of something not being accessible or usable to somebody, it's not a slight. It's not a negative thing, but rather it's an opportunity to learn and grow and do better. Right?
Yeah. It's a learning thing, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's really easy for people to kind of overlook accessibility when they don't have any type of personal connection. Mm-hmm. Like even for Dax and I, we have several people at our company who are blind or have a disability. And so like we use Slack, right? Mm-hmm. within our company, right? For communication and stuff. And so it's amazing how many people are taking the time to add alt text to pictures that they post.
Yeah.
Because they have that connection, right? They're like, well, I don't want to share it with everybody except these people, right?
Exactly.
They want everybody to be able to experience that and enjoy it. And I just think it's a really great thing when people have that personal connection.
Yeah.
It really helps.
Agreed.
Well, and you said one thing, Matisse, that I really enjoyed was that I hope that at some point in my life, accessibility is just what you do. It's not a requirement or a checkbox. It's just, hey, yeah, I want to make sure everybody can read what I'm doing. So of course I would put alt text. Why wouldn't I? Rather than, I guess I've got to put alt text on this, right?
And I think that comes down to how we're taught. So for example, creating an accessible Word document. I've used Word since I was in grade 6, grade 7. I didn't learn how to properly use it, like what that styles pane at the top of a Word. Until I got into accessibility. I was like, you don't say that's what this is used for? And it changed my life with the table of contents.
Right? Well, and not only that, so there's the accessibility benefit, right?
Yeah.
But then when you learn how to use it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to allow me to work so much more efficiently.
Yes.
Right? You're like, this is like life changing, right?
Yeah. With my students in particular, I always show them the styles pane. I'm like, hey, I'm going to show you an accessible Word document. Very quick, very easy. The styles pane is going to be your hero. And they're like, oh, okay, sure it is. Sure it is. So we go through, create just random headers and subheaders and all that stuff. And then we create a table of contents. And their minds are blown because they're used to typing in what the header would be and then period, and trying to line up the numbers. And I'm like, oh, my children, let me show you the way.
Yeah.
Right. But they're not taught that. They're not taught to use the platforms properly, which blows my mind because that's a game changer.
So Dax and I, we had the opportunity, we got to hear a woman speak. Her name is Haben Girma.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever...
Yes, love that book.
And we got to hear her speak at CSUN, I think it was, Dax. Or actually, I think it was CSUN. And she blew my mind, right? Because she was talking and she said, the lights in this room that are on are accommodations for sighted people.
Mm-hmm.
The chairs in this room are accommodations for walking people. And Matisse, my head almost exploded, right? Yeah. I was just like, it made me think of things in a completely different light, for lack of a better term, right? Because it was just so eye-opening, right? Like the things she was saying, it was just amazing, and I'm like, she's so right. She's absolutely right. When people complain about making accommodations for people, we make accommodations for people all the time, day in and day out. We're making accommodations for people. So it was just really, really eye-opening. And I hope our listeners appreciated that as well. And if you get a chance, Haben Girma's book is called The Deafblind Woman Who Conquered Harvard Law, right?
It's a brilliant book.
If you don't know about her, she's deaf and blind and got her law degree from Harvard. Yeah. So, next time you think something's hard, just remember, she accomplished something pretty amazing.
Yeah. I remember one time, it's similar to what you were just saying. I was at a hotel with one of my friends with sight loss, and we went into her room, and I was like, "Oh, do you want me to turn on the light?" She goes, "I don't need it. If you need it, go ahead." I was like, touche,
right? Yeah, you're
like, that's accurate. She's like, "I can navigate just fine."
She's like, "I don't need them." That's great. I love it.
Awesome. Well, Matisse, it has been great having you on the show. We really appreciate you coming on. As we close out, tell us about your book, where people can get it and where they can find your podcast. The time is yours for this last minute or so to kind of give people how to connect with you.
No pressure. All right. So the book, Accessible Communications, Create Impact, Avoid Missteps and Build Trust, that myself and Lisa Reimers wrote, is available now on Amazon, amazon.com, amazon.ca, amazon.co.uk, all the Amazons. You can also get it from the Kogan Page website if you prefer that, or through Barnes & Noble in the US, Indigo in Canada. All those places all have them. The podcast is PR and Lattes, that you can follow at prandlattes.com. Or you can learn more from me and visit me on Instagram at Matisse Nelis. That's MATISSENELIS. Or visit my website, matissenelis.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Matisse. And I hope our listeners enjoyed hearing about Matisse's book and about her experience in accessibility. I know I did, and I think Dax did as well. So
absolutely.
Thank you all for tuning in. My name is Chad Chelius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where every other week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.